Here is your Africa True Story, Africa-wide. African migration to Europe, human trafficking, and the emergence of modern-day slavery. Human trafficking is a global issue that affects people from virtually every part of the world. Though statistics on the extent of the crime is hard to prove, current reports suggest that it is increasing. For instance, more than 500 different trafficking flows were detected between 2012 and 2021 across the globe. Similarly, from a recent global survey on human trafficking, published by International Labour Organization and the Work Free Foundation, an estimated 40.3 million people were reported to be in modern slavery in 2021. While the total annual revenue occurring from human trafficking varies depending on the source, it is estimated to be between 5 and 42 billion US dollars. Although human trafficking is common in different continents of the world, it is endemic in Africa. High levels of unemployment, underdevelopment, corruption, political and economic instabilities may drive Africans to leave the continent only to end up in far worse situations. The quest for survival in the midst of this social, political, and economic crisis have caused high migrant flows from one continent to another. While some migration activities are legal, many others are carried out illegally. Meanwhile, criminals regularly deceive migrants and traffic them into a world of different dimensions of exploitations. While the exact number and demographics of trafficked persons from Africa are unknown, the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime reports often provide guesstimates of the realities. For instance, according to agency reports in 2019, a total of 69 countries detected human trafficking victims from sub-Saharan Africa between 2012 and 2018. It is also believed that European countries are helping human traffickers by closing their doors to migrants who risk swapping hardship at home for a new life of slavery on the road. Migrants prefer taking risks of the unknown in search of what they seem to be better than what is back home. Restrictive immigration policies have created a new world order where barriers to basic services turn migration into real humanitarian crises. Over the years, these barriers have become an advantage for human traffickers. Europe's migration crisis peaked in 2015 with an influx of well over 1 million people. While annual arrivals have since tumbled, European Union members have feuded over how to share the burden, and support for anti-immigrant parties has surged. As governments respond to nationalist sentiments among voters, xenophobic rhetoric has risen, and once safe havens for migrants have closed, allowing human traffickers to jump in and lock migrants into profitable cycles of exploitation and abuse. Labor trafficking is on the rise across Europe and has overtaken sexual exploitation as the predominant form of modern slavery in several countries, including Britain, Belgium, and Portugal. At least 4 million children worldwide are victims of forced labor and sexual exploitation, according to the United Nations. From factories, farms, and fishing boats to domestic servitude and sex work, about 25 million people globally are estimated to be victims of forced labor. Tarnished as criminals, rather than people needing protection, migrants are becoming even more vulnerable to traffickers and to abuse, according to frontline workers. Aid workers, too, say they are bearing the brunt of an ever louder Western clamor against the needy and to any outsiders who are perceived as a threat to the status quo. In 2021, the International Organization for Migration, in a report, found that 71% of migrants traveling from Africa to Europe have experienced exploitation and trafficking. The results are based off of 9,000 survey responses. According to a damning UN migration report in the same year, nearly 3/4 of all migrants moving from Africa to Europe have also experienced serious abuse, exploitation, and practices that could amount to human trafficking. The survey, conducted by the International Organization for Migration, quantifies, for the first time, the alarming scale and frequency of the increasingly prevalent exploitative practices, including instances of forced labor, sex trafficking, organ harvesting, that may amount to modern-day slavery. The running of these global criminal enterprises is spearheaded by transnational criminal groups that cut across continents of the world. These mafia groups combine drug trafficking, arms trafficking, money laundering, and other forms of transnational crime with human trafficking for both labor and sexual exploitation. It is imperative to indicate that counter-trafficking measures in many African states have considerably been ineffective because most of the strategies have rested on the tripod stand of arrest, punishment, and incarceration. While these measures could thrive in addressing the proximate cause of the crime, the remote causes will require proactive measures that will facilitate the process of finding a durable solution to its root causes. To address the scourge of mass migration, human trafficking, and exploitative actions faced by Africans, each state should first consider and find solutions to the underlying or root causes of the crime. These factors are embedded in the country's socio-economic, political, and cultural structures. If the various African countries addresses these factors, it will serve as trajectories to combating the phenomenon. Such task is, however, a collective responsibility of all relevant stakeholders, which include the government, non-government organizations, civil societies, religious and educational institutions, and human rights groups, to mention a few. Despite all this, the question is whether it is better to promote or restrict the mobility of people seeking to migrate. Simply closing the door could have deeply troubling implications for the human rights of the people involved. A better response is to start by recognizing that migration can be positive for those who move within the required and legal mechanism, and host countries should be more accommodating to such individuals in order to protect them from the hungry and thriving business that is human trafficking. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow, share, and like our video. It's the best way of supporting us. And remember, Africa is watching.